Welcome back to Inspire Your Inner Boss. I am so excited because today I get to speak with someone who, for me, really just resonates with each of those keywords in the title of he inspires people with all of his work. He is, helping people listen to their inner voice and finding that inner confidence. And most of all, he is a boss. He has been seen, as an educator on social media, as a style expert. And we've talked a little bit about his journey, which has been full of different pivots as well. But most of all, he is a boss. And I am excited because today with me is someone we know on social media as Style with Dennis Kenney.
Hi, thank you, Jonathan. It's such a pleasure to chat with you today. And I just have to say, thank you for that intro. But I'm talking to a boss as well today, and that was why it took me about 1 second when you asked me to do this to reply a unequivocal yes. So thank you for having me.
No, thank you so much as well. I wanted to know, how are you feeling? How are we doing today?
Oh, we're good. We are good. I mean, life has been coming at me fast, and these are the situations in business-wise, socially, and personally that I've been hoping for, and it's coming true, so it's good.
Yeah, and obviously I said it there in your intro a little bit about all these different titles: style expert, educator, entrepreneur, creative. Talk to me about when you hear all those different titles, is there one that you're kind of resonating with a little bit more or leaning more into right now?
Yes, I mean, it probably depends on the week. When you ask me that question, It changes. But no, that's a great question. And I think I would say that the style with Den, even though I was focusing on fashion, I was styling at GMA for so many years and doing that work. But I'd like to think that style is in everything that I do. Whether it's in a classroom, whether it is even just some of the unglorious work, there still is a sophistication and an approach to it. So that is kind of my mantra and my brand, if you will.
And obviously when you say that too about finding style in everything that you do, was there a moment where you realized that mantra, or when you were like, oh wait, no, this actually is all around?
Actually, there actually was a specific moment in that I was an actor for so many years. That's what I had trained to do, and I had success in that industry, but I came to a point where I was feeling a little bit burnt out. I felt like I'd hit a wall in that capacity, and I was unsure of what to do next. Literally, was like, what am I going to do? And I fell into teaching and had taught at a performing arts charter high school for a year and thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And it ended up being the best year of my entire life. I had 2,000 students. I was completely enriched, and I was motivated, and for all intents and purposes, I was good. This is going to be where my destiny is. And I came back to New York and went to a Lacoste fashion show that a friend had a ticket, just said, okay, I got an extra ticket. And I went, and it was, not to sound cliche, but under those lights, in that moment, it just hit me that I have my own style, my own voice, and I want to give this a shot. And ever since then, there's been a complete change in my direction.
Yeah, and I know you talk about that journey too, especially the pivoting part, listening to your inner voice in your recent TED Talk, which amazing, first of all.
Thank you.
TED Talk, hello. And it's called Don't Forget Your Next Appointment at the Dream Factory, which I encourage so many people to listen to. I know it gave me a better insight into your journey just a little bit more. And just like you mentioned, all those different pivots from theater to educator to style and fashion. You encourage people in there to listen to their inner voice.
Yes.
Is there a moment you also remember, that first moment you ever listened to that inner voice or heard it?
It was a long process, and I think that's what some of the best teachers in this world do, is they instill the lessons they've learned the hard way on the next generations. And for me, I've always have been so motivated, so driven, and I'm not saying that to be like, oh, I'm great. I always had my eye on the prize, but I was unwilling to pivot. I say this analogy, I had horse blinders on. It's like, this is what I'm going to be this, whatever. And it wasn't until that moment I took them off and let myself breathe for a moment and say, what do I want to do next? What do I want to try that I've always been afraid of trying to do, or that I thought I could never? And I got that little voice out of my head that said I could never, and was like, I'm going to just give this a shot. And this is my unique voice, my unique approach that no one else has. And I use the skill set from my acting days, and that's why I encourage anyone just to use your history, your professional life, and all of the things that you've learned and put that towards something new. And I did, and that was a catalyst for change for me.
And I love that you mentioned too about that having that positivity, that kind of, go-getter within yourself. Do you remember who maybe it was inspired by, or if there was someone else in your life who
Oh,
maybe had that trait that instilled it in you? Because I find myself sometimes being the same way, but everyone's like, "You're always so positive." And I'm like, for as long as I can remember, that was the only way to navigate through things. I
yes.
don't know.
And it's on my mind now as I've had to reflect on this for some other personal goals that I have. And for the education world, I had a professor, her name was Victoria Santa Cruz. She was an Afro-Peruvian artist, an educator, an activist, and I was blessed to be the last cohort at Carnegie Mellon to spend 4 years with her. And without going too deep and too crazy, her work was about harnessing the moment, living in the moment. You know how we talked today already about projecting forward, about goal setting. We're always looking forward when I make it, when I would do something great. And her approach was, let's be directly present, take that breath. Like right now, you and I are having this conversation, and find the magic in that. And that is the work that I've been putting in with the students at Harvard, with anybody that I talk to, is that it is important to set goals, but also important to not miss those little magical moments that are happening right now. So my point with her is that she had instilled a level of confidence in me, and we're talking many years ago. And even in my lowest moments, the times where I heard no, the times where I had rejection, the times where I didn't know where I was going to go next, I was getting a little emotional talking about it. And I remember a specific moment where she turned to me before I graduated, and she had this energy, and she said, "Kid, you are good." And in those moments when, and you and I were chatting a little bit before this, you said, do you ever really get nervous before big interviews or before anything that you do that you really care about and has pressure? And I now remember that I always remember that moment and replay it in my head when she told me that.
Wow.
And so my point in this is that certain people can have that power as educators to instill that confidence in people, and that's something that I'm working on. So I know I kind of went a little bit off the beaten path there, but that really was a defining moment for me that I've drawn so much strength from.
Yeah, and I think that is so special to even hear those words, just so simple, can have such a long-lasting impact, like you said in your case as well. And I gotta say, I love that she's also Peruana because I am Peruvian as well. So here we have like all these connections.
Yes,
Okay,
I'm feeling
keep
that.
them coming. In the TED Talk, you also talk about pivoting, which
Yes.
obviously we've discussed it a little bit as well. But talk to me about, is there, you would say, a secret to reinvention, or how was that kind of journey for you in finding your power in that?
Yes, there is. The secret is to make that decision that you're going to pivot and to be consistent. Many times we say, I want to try something new. I want to, whether it's a business or just even dipping your toe in something, and we give it a shot full steam for a couple weeks, and then we don't get the results that we envisioned that were supposed to happen at the drop of a hat, and we move on. And that's why many times you hear people's stories that said, oh, I tried that, it didn't work. Well, let's actually define what not working means. And for me, it is that consistency. You have to have an end game and in your eyesight, but also you just have to know it's going to take some time to find your tribe, to find the people that are going to gravitate towards you. And so it's that self-belief, it's that overpowering any doubt that may come into your mind. I still have doubt that comes in moments, at moments going, what am I doing? But it's fleeting because I truly know that I am capable and I have that self-belief. Mm-hmm. So that was a key in me pivoting, but many of it was me just giving this whirl. I didn't necessarily have a well thought out plan, but it was that decision to go for it every day, to put out my message. And that's not necessarily with just a post, although that is part of it if we're talking social media, because if you have all these wonderful thoughts in your mind and you're not sharing it with people. And I also want to say, and that's something that I see in you and I love about your work as well, is that we have to overcome any fear about what people are going to think. You know, we don't have to ask permission to put our story out there or to put our business interests out there or to market ourselves. Because the people that are maybe having a problem with that, probably deep down, in my opinion, probably want to do that or have a hesitancy. Yeah. So it's my job to not be concerned with that voice or that tribe of people, and to be more concerned with the people that my message resonates with.
Yeah, which I think is such an important conversation to have too, because especially when we see entrepreneurs or people who, from our point of view, it looks like success is like
Yes.
this,
Yes.
you know,
Oh
and we
gosh,
meet them
yes.
at the stage. We were just saying too about how when I met you, you know, I met you in this stage where you were exploring and diving into that fashion space,
Yes.
and but hearing your TED talk, it gave me more insight into it wasn't always just this path, you know. So it's important, I feel like, sometimes for us to hear that from entrepreneurs, that also
Yes.
our voice, we should have it, and it's okay to be authentic with the struggles, with the
It's
current journey
true.
that we're on.
I
Is that,
still
yeah.
need to hear that too, because I've been somebody that I will say can put out maybe the highlights quite often, and that's why that TED Talk was a big cathartic moment for me to say, okay, I have had struggles in my story, so I need to remind myself of that. And it also allows you, when you do so, to cherish the successes even more, because you realize where you came from.
I was gonna say too, with doing the TED Talk and that whole process, just because I'm fascinated by it in general.
Yeah.
Was there a part of your journey that you did reflect a little bit more harder, or was maybe hard to revisit a little bit more, or unlock some new things
Yes.
from it?
Yes. I love it. You're getting deep with me, and I'm there.
Thank you for being open to it.
Yes. It was. I mean, if I would talk about, for me and my sexuality, for me, I had a relatively good experience in that when I came out and there were open arms there and I had a good support network, and I'm aware that not everybody has that same story. But this was my internal struggle prior to that, where I was good at hockey. I was in Boston and I was this hockey player, and I was great, but I did have a facility and a talent for it, and this was prior to me coming to terms or even knowing what I truly was as a person. So when I put that mask on ice, the helmet rather, it gave me permission to be fearless, but also underneath that was a lot of fear, because I was running from who I truly was, and I had to feel like I had to be this ultra masculine version of myself, which ended up, I had a physical injury that was pretty devastating. So that for me was a part of my life that I had to revisit for that TED Talk. But now when I look back on it, yes, it was a physical break, but in hindsight, it was a breakthrough for me.
Chills.
And it allowed me to leave that old part of myself behind, not to forget it, but to move forward. So I know it's such a platitude. You hear, everything happens for a reason. Well, you know what? It's a platitude for a reason, because it does. It's part of your story and what you need to endure.
Yeah, and even when I started this podcast, and just the whole concept of it was to help people be inspired by what they've gone through.
Yes.
And so even when you say that too, we always say, oh, it all happens for a reason. But it's like, you need to take a deep dive into what happened in order for it to propel you
Yes.
forward. I think you need to revisit, you need to heal.
Yes.
And just come to terms with that aspect a little bit.
I agree.
Yeah.
And there's also a fine line between revisiting occasionally for perspective and for purpose, as opposed to living in it. And that's when people become stagnant and they can't move forward. And that's what I try to say when I'm talking to even just a friend, or if I'm educating somebody in any capacity. Say, okay, yes, this happened. Wasn't the best moment, but what did we learn from that? What did we gain from it? And you know what? It happened, and you're still here.
Yeah.
So we go back to gratitude, which I don't want to sit here across from you that I'm somebody who lives in that world and has achieved it with perfection, but it is something, as I've gotten older and as I have experienced some success, that I am more cognizant of, is being grateful for what I have and try to look at what I have as opposed to what I don't.
So true, and so important too. When you talk about that journey, I was also saying to you how I met you in this phase of your life,
Yes.
where you were, the fashion expert. You were on GMA, ABC, Fox. We would, I know I would see you, but I felt like when I started to see on your social medias you sharing the journey as an educator, I always thought, oh, it was from style expert to
Yes.
educator. But to even hear your TED Talk and even us talking, you had that already experience, and that was kind of
Yes.
a little bit of your roots as well. How was it then to go from educator to style expert? Was that transition organic, or?
It was not as organic as it may have seemed, and it is interesting. We even the way you phrased it, which I love, is that we meet people in different chapters of their story, of their book,
Yeah.
if you will. And so it's all just a part of who we are. And so that, to me, the word that came to mind is evolving. And I'd like to think that I'm doing so. We all are. And so I'm not afraid to go and to transition into new parts of my life. I always am searching for an adventure and for paths that I have yet to walk through. So that is a big part of it. But for my particular story, as a dramatic actor and a comedic actor, but as a thespian, if you will, that has underlined everything that I do. Because that's why I teach communication. Because no matter what, if you can't transmit that message, if you can't evoke an emotion of somebody, if you can't, storytelling is in everything that I do. So even if you look, when you said you jumped in when I was in GMA and doing fashion, I was telling my story. Yeah. And so I think that's why people have resonated with the work that I've done. It's that really take us through on a journey. It's not just something that is one-dimensional.
And in your journey now, obviously, of going back to those roots, educator, but also growing in that space, talk to me a little bit about what you are doing. Obviously, yes. I know and I've seen a little bit about your journey with Harvard and yes. your students there, Columbia as well. Yes. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Of course. It's some of the best work and most fulfilling work that I've ever done in my life, and it was completely unexpected. If you and I had sat here 3.5 years ago, besides getting out of the pandemic, I would have said you're crazy for telling me what I'm doing. But I am at Harvard Business School, and I'm working with the doctoral students specifically who are about to get their doctorates and go out into the world to become hopefully tenured professors and game changers in the industry. And I specifically come in the process where they've done their research, they have put their slide construction together, and they go into these rooms and they get flyouts from universities to present their research. And it is cutthroat, the competition, where every little facet of a presentation matters. And so I look at it from the storytelling aspect, about their physicality, their vocal tone, their eye contact, and then deeper into their progression of their story. And it's all of these layers, and also how they physically present themselves, which hence the fashion industry. It's not something that I've left behind. It's just evolved into this, and it's how you brand yourself. And about that first impression, when someone walks in a room, it's not a bad intention, but just if you go back and look at what's cognitively happening when you see somebody, you are making split-second decisions. And also the human mind, not to get too deep, but within 45 seconds, no matter what, another thought is going to come in, no matter how compelling the person you're watching. So how can we give physical cues, visual cues to change it up to keep their interest? So I have really approached that on a deep level with them, and I am grateful that it has resonated. Yeah. And so I've been at the business school at Harvard. I'm now working at Columbia, and it is something that has just really taken off, and I feel like I have my own little niche in that market, and I'm not going to let go of it.
Obviously, I know it's also inspired you in some way in your educational
yes.
journey. Can you share how it has kind of, I know I saw some posts on social media
yes.
too about Master.
Yes.
How has that inspired you as well?
Yes, and that's also a reminder too. Listen, you got to share what you're doing in your life, and it doesn't always have to be these home runs all the time, but that's just people, like you said, you resonated with even just hearing what's going on in my story. So I can't say that enough. I want to give you permission, people permission to put themselves out there in that regard. But I have continued my education. I got my my BFA at Carnegie Mellon many moons ago, and I went back to Northwestern now to get my master's in science and communication, and that has, knock on wood, has been going very well, and I am now pursuing my doctorate, which I'll be doing to get an EDD in education and leadership policy. And so it's started to switch into beyond just people presenting their work in academia, but also what can I do from a policy standpoint in the education world to help students that are LGBTQ, that to make sure that our history is not erased from the textbooks or that is included, that there is stronger implementation for anti-bullying campaigns, that there are mentorship programs that I'm taking from the corporate world that I've been in and want to put that into the world of education. And so it is just limitless of what I want to do in that regard. So I'm going to continue my education, and it is never too late. I would not be in that bracket of age where you would say, okay, I'm 22 and I'm going to go out there and keep doing my work. Is that it is truly never too late. And so it is not easy. this has taken everything that I've had, but it is something that I'm passionate about.
And with that evolution too, even being inspired to go, get your master's, being inspired to talk with these students, do you still happen to come across doubt? And if so, how do you address those and kind of put a stamp on it?
Yes.
I'm going to keep going.
I laugh when you say it because I have this little sentence that pops in my head because I have taken on quite a bit. And it's taken a lot of what everything that I have to get it to this level. And so I have these little moments. I go, why am I doing this? I'm like, I'm not to say, that everything is perfect in my life, but I'm happy with certain aspects of it, and I don't necessarily have to take on some of these challenges, but it's just kind of in my DNA, the way that I'm built. And so I encourage anyone is that, okay, if you've hit that pinnacle or what you maybe were striving for, let's create some new goals. Let's keep on going, because a teacher who says to you that they are simply educators and that they have stopped the process of learning is not a teacher that I want to be in a classroom with or pay a dime to be around. And so you have to always be evolving and learning, and that is why I've taken on this challenge.
And you've definitely continued to take on more challenges in a sense, or as I'd say, gigs and just things that you are passionate about. You also, welcomed me into this incredible studio today. Talk to me about the studio, where we're at, and also how you are involved as well, that chapter, that journey.
Yes, well, this is an exciting journey. It's called Arroyo Studio, and I certainly can't sit here and take all the credit for it, but I have had a role in the marketing aspect as Vice President of Marketing here. And the long story short of this business is that, and it's always hard to kind of pigeonhole it into one part of the industry, but in the textile industry, there are brands that are already established and also brands that are looking for that catalyst to put themselves on the map and to get their home decor into large retailers. And so working with Steve McGee, who is the catalyst for this and was formerly with Bed Bath & Beyond, and has just done an incredible job to bring this on his feet in this beautiful space in Fifth Avenue, and will be expanding soon to India as well.
Wow.
There'll be an Arroyo Studios there. But we take everything from the design aspect to choosing the materials, to the entire rollout, to marketing, to giving a brand story. So anything in the home decor space, this is where it happens. And it's been making quite a mark in the industry.
With that as well, obviously talking about your journey, how do you define a boss?
A boss? Because when I hear the word, I don't want to put thoughts in anybody else's head when they hear boss, but what does it elicit? Of course, the sense of control, success, somebody who dictates to others, that has influence. Okay, those are obvious, and that's part of the spectrum. Now let's move it to, and this is actually coincides with my work at Northwestern right now, that's why I've really been thinking about it, is a boss is also somebody that can conduct a team efficiently. And so that is listening to other people, to giving your team a sense of power, knowing what their strength is and delegating and letting them feel that they are part of this equation, which they are. And it's the strength in that number, in that community, that can truly elevate you. So a boss is somebody that is inclusive, somebody who listens, and somebody who is reachable and connects with people, as opposed to I'm up here and you're down here. And that is kind of the old power of how it works. And there is a new era that is coming in on so many levels, and that is the type of boss that I hope to be. But at the end of the day, another one that you hear when you think of boss is that you are in control of many people and that you delegate, like I said. But you can just be your own boss. And that is something, you don't have to have a team. It can be you, simply you are maybe working a job right now that isn't the end goal for you, but that is a means to something else. And so it's about saying, okay, this is a step to this. So a boss is creating your own schedule, your own plan, and listening to your intuition.
Yeah. And I've loved these conversations too, because I think a lot of times, and I know for myself too, when I heard the word boss, it was so intimidating growing up. And I would be like, well, I know I'm definitely going to always be a team player. Like, I don't want to be a boss. That sounds stressful, just just not in my personality and whatnot. And I think in these conversations too that I've had with people, it's been very enlightening to, yes, there is this like negative connotation to it and whatnot.
Yes.
But there's also that good side of the spectrum of, you know, these positive things that you can impact, you can have on people, that you can inspire people, you can lead, you can influence, but in a way of doing good. And I think we don't often hear that. And I think when you said it too, there's a new wave of that coming in.
There is.
I think we're having more conversations and we're seeing more people being able to do this work.
We are changing, and I think that's something that you and I have both done in our careers, have used social media and created our own voice and our own channel, if you will, to be your own voice and tell your own story the way no one can tell their story the way you do. And so that's something that is important for me. And one other thing about it, I love that you brought up the boss aspect of this in this way, is that you don't have to be always this domineering, strong person that puts themselves out there. You know, some people's superpower or strength is being that person that's kind of in the background, but it's embracing that and knowing that that is your power that makes you a boss.
Yes.
It's what's comfortable to your personality. Going back to even when I'm working with the students at Harvard, it's not about making every student who presents their research being this rock star who's the whole room's gonna be laughing and this, and he's such a star. Do those people come along? Is it great? Yes. But also, you know, I've had students that are like, I am kind of straightforward. This is how I am. I said, well, I want somebody like you on my team. Somebody that I'm not going to have to worry about things getting done, who's going to pay attention to detail. And so it's about embracing all of your natural strong suits and strengths. And that is what, in my opinion, defines strength and being a boss.
People who maybe listen to this or come across this hopefully at one point, and I think it can relate to so many people who we may not have it all figured out right now, but we're pushing day to day. We're taking that step every day to kind of, you know, follow what our dream is or what our vision is.
And I hope that we never get it all figured out, because when you've got it all figured out, then where's the journey going? There always is an involvement. There is always another question to ask and another adventure to take.
Yeah, and like I said it earlier before we even got on here, I just like you're talking about evolution and all that, and I don't want to put pressure on you and your career, but I definitely think you are walking that and showing that to many of us. So thank you so much for doing that.
You gave me chills on that, and genuinely I concur with you, and I have a lot of pride for what you're doing, and I want you to continue with that. So this has been my pleasure.
Thank you so much, Dennis, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Dennis, Kenney, where can they follow you, check you out, see what you're up to?
All right, well, definitely Style with Den, @Style with Den on Instagram is my main vessel.